Amazing transformative moment. Millionaire discovers little boy's hidden struggles and exposes the inequities of success. Jack Thompson, a self-made millionaire with unparalleled success in real estate, sauntered through Maple Woods Park, the summer sun spilling golden rays across the vibrant green grass. He was the picture of triumph. Wealth poured into his bank account like water from a fountain. Yet, as he watched children play, an unsettling void nagged at him. What was success if it felt so hollow? His eyes fell upon a small figure hunched over a bench. A boy, no older than 10, scribbling furiously on loose sheets of paper. Bright eyes shone through a storm of messy hair, and Jack's heart sank at the sight. The project sketches bore unrefined ideas, evidence of a budding scientist lost in the chaos of premature dreams that overshadowed a marginalized existence. Curiosity turned into a profound ache as Jack approached, catching snippets of the boy's enthusiastic mumblings about chemical reactions. Yet, Jack's thoughts quickly shifted to Sam's mother, a single parent working long shifts at the local diner, a name he scarcely knew but whose face haunted him now that he dared to acknowledge the struggle. The countless nights of missed dinners and sleepless worry that shadowed this child's potential. The deeper Jack delved into Sam's life, the more every memory of his own carefree childhood surfaced. Dreams once vivid now dulled by the relentless pursuit of wealth. As he surveyed the world around him, all the shiny cars and lavish clothes, he struggled with anger and guilt. Why had he left the essence of joy for corporate ladders and endless success? Turning back to the bench, he witnessed Sam's hopeful ambition, something Jack had once held dear, yet had traded for portfolios and real estate listings. The emotional weight pressed harder. Could he risk his well-established reputation to pull this boy from the brink of obscurity? Could he confront the truth about his own journey? Jack decided to attend the school science fair, a place where Sam's dreams were belittled by impatient adults and peers distracted by glitz instead of grounded in genuine curiosity. Jack seethed silently, every dismissive word a reflection of the social snobbery he was acutely aware of, yet had been complicit in sustaining. Suddenly, the support he once craved from the elite community transformed into an anchor weighing him down, judging him for even contemplating a shift toward mentoring Sam. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Staring at Sam during that meeting stirred something in Jack that grew into an unbearable tension. He was 45, a millionaire. Yet here, among the crowd, he felt exposed and vulnerable. Every face from his past successes bore a judgmental glare. How had he let it get this far? The warm applause he had once basked in now echoed hollow against the chilling realization that champions of success could also be the executioners of dreams. Jack's reality spiraled as resistance clawed at him, the urge to stand and speak battling against the instinct to retreat into comfortable silence. He clenched his fists, feeling clammy tension surge through him. Would he support a future for Sam, an outcast in a world that demanded the luxurious over the luminous? As he caught Sam's wide-eyed gaze in the thrumming room, Jack's breath caught. Would he risk everything? Just as the silence became deafening, Jack raised his trembling hands to speak. Jack's heart raced as he stood in front of the crowd, aware of the weight of every eye on him. Each scrutinizing gaze seemed to amplify his own internal conflict. The air thickened around him, charged with unspoken expectations and judgments, an invisible chain binding him to his past. What am I doing? He thought, battling a surge of self-doubt. He had built an empire from nothing, yet he felt as though he was on the precipice of dismantling it all with the words that hung unspoken on his lips. Behind him, the raucous chatter of indulgent parents faded into obscurity as the focus of his attention narrowed solely on Sam, the boy who embodied all the hope he had abandoned. "Sam," Jack called, and the boy's head jolted up, surprise painting his features. The hush that fell over the crowd felt surreal. Could he really speak out in support of a child from the very background he had distanced himself from? "Your project about chemical reactions is incredible," Jack began, his voice steadying with each word. "You see the world in a way that so many have forgotten. Your curiosity is a gift. It deserves to be celebrated." A ripple of murmurs filled the room. Parents exchanged glances, unsure of whether to support his outburst or to scorn the distraction from their own children's accolades. Jack braced himself against their judgment, but he knew he could not turn back. He continued, "This is a space where ideas should take flight, regardless of where we come from. But too often, our society nudges the most brilliant thinkers into the shadows, as if their dreams are optional. You, Sam, are not optional." As he spoke, each sentence felt like a thread weaving him anew, a tapestry of ambition and altruism. He thought of the countless lives that could be impacted if only those in positions of power would always advocate for the underdog. Jack wasn't merely speaking to Sam, he was speaking to himself, peeling back layers of his own complacency. The crowd was silent. A palpable mix of anticipation and disbelief hung in the air. Jack's determination bolstered him as he realized the ramifications of his words, not just for Sam, but for himself. Here was a chance not only to reshape a young life, but to liberate his own spirit, shackled by a definition of success that was always financial and never personal. Perhaps in this moment, he was at last peeling himself away from decades of ambition rooted in greed. Breathless, Jack stepped down from where he stood. His heart hammered, and he quickly made his way to the foot of the stage, kneeling down to meet Sam eye to eye. The boy's expression morphed from surprise to something more profound. Hope, perhaps. "Sam, I want to help you," Jack whispered, throat tight with urgency. "Let's work on your ideas together. You deserve a chance to shine." Jack's offer hung in the air as Sam's eyes widened, the world around them blurring into oblivion. In surrendering his fear of judgment, Jack crossed an invisible threshold, confronting both his career and conscience. The whispers surged behind him, a cacophony of disbelief and admiration. But before Jack could bask in the light of this new path, a familiar figure stepped forward from the outskirts of the crowd. David, his former business associate, impatience rippling through his demeanor. "What are you thinking, Jack? You're jeopardizing everything." Suddenly, Jack faced a new challenge. This confrontation threatened to unravel his budding resolve. The moment had arrived to confront not only the inequality he had witnessed, but his own definition of success. Could he navigate this storm and remain true to his newfound purpose? As the eyes of the audience swirled with expectation, he felt the weight of his decision rise. Could he face the ultimate choice? Business as usual, or a transformative investment in the future of someone else? Jack's gaze locked onto David, who stood firm with arms crossed, embodying skepticism. The faces in the crowd blurred into a sea of uncertainty, but in that moment, Jack's focus narrowed to the challenge David presented. Here was a man who had once been by his side, navigating the world of wealth and ambition. A reminder of the very life Jack was now questioning. "What am I jeopardizing, David?" Jack asked, his voice rising above the murmurs. "Is it the illusion of success, or the chance to inspire change?" David's brow furrowed as he took a step forward, the disapproval radiating from him almost tangible. "You're jeopardizing your reputation, Jack. You've built your empire through hard work and tenacity. This isn't just a hobby. It's your legacy at stake." Jack felt an electric pulse course through him. Legacy. The word echoed in his mind, spinning like a top. He had spent a lifetime constructing a facade of success and power that weighed heavily on his soul. The accolades, the financial accomplishments. They felt hollow now compared to the potential to change a single life, to encourage a boy like Sam to dream bigger. "Maybe it's time for a new legacy," Jack replied, his voice surprisingly steady. "One rooted in hope rather than profit." A ripple of surprise coursed through the crowd, like the tremors before an earthquake. Jack felt their eyes shift, skepticism faltering into curiosity. Sam, still wide-eyed, absorbed the exchange as if it were a lesson unfolding before him. Perhaps Jack's moment of vulnerability could reshape not only his trajectory, but Sam's as well. David rolled his eyes, incredulity mingling with annoyance. "You're out of your mind, Jack. Your reputation isn't just a facade. It's your credibility. You'll lose it all. We've spent years building our brand, our network. What's this going to cost you?" Cost. The word struck deep. Jack recalled countless sleepless nights spent in pursuit of financial gain. He had thought it was worth every sacrifice, yet each step, driven by ambition, pulled him further from the essence of who he was. Was he truly willing to sacrifice hope for currency? The question hung in the air like the suffocating weight of a boardroom meeting. "I thought you believed in second chances," Jack countered, venom seeping into his words. "This is mine, and not just for me. For Sam. What do we want the next generation to learn from us? That success comes at the expense of compassion?" Silence enveloped the exchange. The audience held its breath, witnessing a confrontation that laid bare not just Jack's soul, but the depth of his convictions. Jack felt the tightness in his chest begin to ebb as clarity surged in its place. His purpose crystallized: to advocate for the underdog, to instill belief in the potential of young dreamers. David's expression softened, if only for a moment, as he weighed Jack's words. "I'm just looking out for you," he murmured, more to himself than to Jack. With each beat of his heart, Jack felt renewed strength pulse through him. It wasn't merely about standing by Sam, but about reclaiming the ideals that once fueled his passion. In choosing to invest in Sam's potential, he was also redefining what it meant to succeed. "I appreciate your concern, David," Jack said, his voice firm, yet surprisingly calm. "But this is a risk I'm willing to take. I'm done measuring success in dollar signs. It's time to nurture what truly matters." Turning back to Sam, Jack felt a surge of determination, as if the boy's hopeful gaze infused him with purpose. He had crossed a threshold, no longer tethered to the past, but willing to shape a future built on possibilities. "Sam," Jack declared, addressing the boy with newfound conviction, "let's create something extraordinary together. Ideas can change the world. Let's make sure yours shine." But as the crowd leaned in, anticipation thickening in the air, Jack couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. The tension remained palpable. What would happen when the others realized that change had already begun? Would they support this unfamiliar direction or turn against him? As he surveyed the sea of eyes before him, still uncertain, Jack understood that true confrontation was yet to come. With every decision, he was paving a path where the repercussions would echo throughout not just his life, but the lives of those he aimed to uplift. And in that moment, the stakes wouldn't just be personal. They would test the very foundations of everything Jack had ever known. Jack stood in the aftermath of his declaration, each heartbeat drumming the urgency of uncharted territory. As murmurs rolled through the crowd, he felt the weight of their collective scrutiny. Their curiosity, once laced with skepticism, began to nurture a seed of hope. But that seed was still fragile, easily crushed under the pressures of past expectations and doubt. "Now what?" he thought, scanning the faces before him as the air thickened with tension. He knew confrontation was inevitable. David's voice lingered in Jack's mind, a constant reminder of the potential complications that lay ahead. His reputation, his legacy. Could he really risk everything he had built? Determination scrambled with doubt, creating a storm within him, demanding clarity. Jack's first instinct was to retreat to the safety of the established. Yet the irony struck him. Retreat would mean abandoning the very purpose he had just declared. In seeking to understand and uplift Sam, he was confronting his own shortcomings. In light of that, Jack felt the strange allure of vulnerability. It was terrifying yet liberating, giving him permission to be authentic. "Focus," Jack muttered to himself. It was time to navigate this new chapter carefully. He had to mold this vision into action. After all, ideas alone meant little without execution. He glanced down at Sam, whose gaze sparkled with admiration, adding fuel to Jack's fire. The boy's authentic belief in him rekindled the flame of purpose that had long flickered in the shadows of ambition. "Let's start small," Jack decided. "We can transform the idea into something real, something tangible that can uplift others." With renewed focus, he laid out a plan. They could hold workshops, mentorship sessions, anything to cultivate young talent and instill unwavering belief in their potential. As Jack spoke, details carved themselves into his mind, each one a thread in the tapestry he was weaving. The more he conceptualized, the less frightening the endeavor appeared. His heart raced not with fear, but with exhilaration. Here was a real opportunity, not just for Sam, but for himself as well. However, the thought of his peers rebuking him loomed ominously, like a thunderstorm on the horizon. Could he stand firm against the tide of convention? It was one thing to outline a vision. It was another altogether to defend it against disbelief and disappointment. Suddenly, from somewhere deep within, Jack found clarity. He would frame this as a movement to cultivate change and ignite potential within future generations. That was contagious, and the public often rallied behind causes that sang to the aspirations of collective dreams. If he could present it in that light, it could reclaim the momentum David feared he had lost. Yet, doubt cast its long shadow again. Would they perceive this endeavor as mere philanthropy, or a genuine call to action? Jack's hands trembled slightly as he contemplated the duality of the challenge ahead. The very roots of his professional identity were entwined in the world he sought to break away from. With every ounce of determination, Jack resolved to press forward. But what if they see it? He thought. What if they feel the authenticity behind it? The role reversal, transitioning from an architect of profit to a nurturer of potential, invigorated him. As the crowd continued to watch expectantly, Jack turned back to Sam, who held an eager smile, embodying endless possibilities. "Let's meet tomorrow," he said, his tone filled with conviction. "We'll begin drafting our vision together." Yet, beneath the promises of tomorrow lay a burgeoning conflict. Jack was about to leap into this new realm, uncharted but filled with potential. His previous life would claw back, probing his resolve, questioning his motives. Would he miss the comforts of the past? He wanted to be a mentor, a beacon of hope for Sam and others like him. But was there a way to balance that with the world he knew too well? The doubt clawed at him, sowing uncertainty deep in his gut. Yet curiosity about this new direction pulled him forward. And as he prepared to leave the stage, an unannounced voice broke through the palpable silence. "What do you plan to do, Jack?" It was David again, standing not far away, arms crossed, an uneven blend of challenge and concern etched across his features. The confrontation he had been waiting for had arrived. Heart racing, Jack took a deep breath. This was the moment to defend his choices, to justify his leap into the unknown. What he didn't yet know was how that conversation would shape them both. Jack steadied himself, the weight of David's icy demeanor pressing heavily on him. The room felt smaller, every minute detail magnified. The sticky floor beneath his shoes, the barely audible shuffle of attendees, and Sam's hopeful gaze flickering anxiously between the two men. "What do you plan to do, Jack?" David repeated, his tone a calculated mixture of incredulity and concern. Jack could see the questions hidden in those narrowed eyes. A blend of doubt and accusation masked his care. "I'm going to help," Jack replied, the words pouring out before he could question them. "I'm going to invest in these kids, their futures, their dreams." David's eyes narrowed even further. "Invest how? By giving them handouts. That won't change anything in the long run. You know that." The challenge hung in the air, prickling Jack's skin. He had expected resistance, but standing before David's judgment, he felt unprepared, stripped of his bravado. A flicker of anger rose within him, a reaction he hadn't predicted. He wrestled it down, searching instead for the deeper truth of his purpose. It's not about handouts, David. It's about creating opportunities, mentorship, education, skill development. It's about igniting their potential. But who are you to ignite anyone's potential? What do you know about their lives? Their struggles? David countered, his arms crossing tighter, forming a barrier. Jack felt the sting of those words. A reminder that, despite his success, he came from a place of privilege. Uncertainty flickered again, making Jack wonder if he had underestimated the depth of his new challenge. I'm willing to learn, David. I'm willing to step outside of my comfort zone and face the messiness of their realities, he said, trying to ground his voice in sincerity. The crowd around them seemed to shift uneasily, recognizing the volatility of the confrontation. Someone coughed awkwardly. A few murmurs echoed his sentiments, but most stood silent, their anticipation thickening the air. Face the messiness? David mocked, an edge creeping into his tone. That's easy to say, but when you experience the crumbling dreams and bitter realities that come with poverty, I bet you'll retreat to your safe world in no time. Jack's pulse quickened. David's words echoed with resonant truth, yet they lit a fire within him. Could he truly adapt to this mission? Was he prepared to relinquish the comforts of his previous life, to endure hardship, disillusionment, perhaps even failure? Maybe I will, he shot back, his voice gaining strength. But I need to try, and I will try for Sam and others like him. I owe it to them, and to myself. He locked eyes with Sam, who was now biting his lip, entranced by the exchange. That small boy's belief in him acted as a tether, reeling him back from the edge of despair. You'll lose everything, you know. Your stature and reputation, the very things you built your life around. David's concern dripped with skepticism, but Jack could feel a shift. Perhaps it was the moment playing out before them that began to sway others in the crowd. Maybe I need to lose some of that, Jack said, the boldness in his voice surprising even him. What if the life I built was all a charade, a distraction from what really matters? You think I don't recognize the risks? I do. But I also see the opportunity to create something real, something that could shift the paradigm for kids like Sam. David leaned closer, skepticism still holding fort. And when it fails, because it likely will, what then? Jack inhaled deeply, focusing on the inevitable uncertainties. Then I'll learn. I'll adapt. No one ever said this would be easy, but I believe in this journey enough to take the chance. I'm willing to face the fear of failure head-on. The silence that followed was thick and charged. Jack's heart raced. A mix of exhilaration and dread pulsed through him. The surrounding onlookers had become a distinct entity, their expressions shifting as they processed Jack's words, hoping, questioning, and grappling with their own narratives. We'll see how far that conviction carries you, David finally replied, still skeptical. But a flicker of something deeper passed between them. Was it respect, or perhaps a begrudging acknowledgement of Jack's resolve? As David stepped back, the air shifted, charged with unspoken friction. Jack could sense he had crossed a threshold, not just in his conversation with David, but in a personal commitment to this new endeavor. He turned back to Sam, whose eyes gleamed with a mixture of admiration and curiosity. Jack realized he was no longer just defending his actions. He was beginning to embody them, inching toward an identity that embraced growth beyond success. The next steps lay heavy yet radiant with potential. Would the cautious optimism in the audience translate into tangible support? More importantly, could he sustain this momentum against the relentless tide of doubt that threatened to undermine him? Just as he was about to stride forward, a voice interrupted again. But what if you fail everyone who counts on you? It was an unknown face in the crowd, probing, echoing the doubts that lingered in Jack's mind. The question hung in the balance, leaving an echo in the air, a challenge he hadn't anticipated. And with it came the truth that awaited him. The transformation that had begun would demand more than he had prepared for. What would it take to rise beyond the fear of failure? Jack felt the weight of that question settling on him, pressing into the frail fabric of hope he was attempting to weave anew. Jack took a deep breath, his mind racing with the weight of the challenges ahead. He scanned the crowd, seeking solace in the familiar faces, but finding only shadows of uncertainty reflected back at him. The voice that had pierced the tension resonated in his ears, echoing his own fears. He had not given much thought to the possibility of failure, and the very real implications it would have on those counting on him. Could failure become a burden too heavy to bear? He thought. The idea planting roots in his mind, sprouting into a worry that gnawed at his resolve. Each potential setback replayed in his mind with vivid clarity, and Jack's conviction began to waver under the glare of scrutiny. But as he moved through the thrumming crowd, seeking clarity, he realized he was surrounded by faces holding their own questions. It wasn't just about him anymore. It was about the young hearts like Sam's, those innocent, sparkling eyes filled with dreams too big for their current circumstances. The urgency in their gaze suddenly ignited a determination deep within Jack, a resolve to confront not just the external challenges, but also the inner darkness that threatened to swallow him whole. Maybe I should start by listening, Jack whispered to himself, channeling his anxious energy into a plan. It wasn't going to be pretty, and the path wouldn't be a smooth one, but he needed to understand the reality of those he aimed to help. Each story he would encounter might not only challenge his perceptions, but also refine his purpose, shaping him into the catalyst for change he wished to become. Jack made his way to Sam's side, kneeling to meet him at eye level. "You believe I can make a difference, huh?" The boy nodded fervently, a flicker of hope illuminating his features. "Then let's make sure I don't let you down," Jack said, and with that, he felt the burden of expectation shift. It became a collective mission, woven not just into his identity, but into every child he encountered. He decided to reach out to the community for help. Local schools, youth organizations, even parents. The more perspectives he gathered, the deeper his understanding would become. Each conversation would be a thread, weaving a tapestry of experiences from which he could draw insight. As he brainstormed how to structure his approach, Jack felt a sense of urgency bubbling in his chest. With renewed purpose, he hastily grabbed his phone, opening a notes app to jot down every potential connection he could make. He would not shy away from the discomfort of his ignorance. He would embrace it, using it as a stepping stone toward growth. But the doubt still lingered. What if this was too ambitious? What if the voices urging him to push forward, to confront his fear of failure instead of retreating, proved fatal when he inevitably stumbled? Just then, David's words returned to him, echoing with painful clarity. What if you fail? He realized, however, that it was precisely that fear that had ignited the passion to try. Failure, he thought, was no longer synonymous with defeat. It was a teacher, an opportunity to learn, adapt, and emerge stronger. The narrative was shifting, and he was determined to steer it. Jack stood tall, fueled by this newfound clarity. With a determined stride, he approached the mic once more, which still stood ominously at the front of the room. "I want to ask all of you to come together and share your stories, your insights, and your challenges. I can't do this alone. This is just the beginning, a conversation about what we can build together, one child at a time. We're going to learn a lot, and I'm ready to embrace everything it takes." There was a moment of silence, then a ripple of murmurs began to spread through the audience. He searched for Sam amidst the shifting sea of bodies, wanting him to feel the energy of this connection. They were all in it together now. But at that moment, David's glare caught his attention, remaining sharp with skepticism. Jack felt the weight of that doubt again, a momentary hesitation that threatened to undermine his momentum. David had not been convinced, and could he truly claim to lead a cause when battling against his own fears? As the murmurs escalated, Jack sensed the latent tension in the room, a foreboding hum beneath the budding enthusiasm. Within that atmosphere lay the question that haunted him. Was he truly prepared for the unfolding storm ahead, or was he simply inviting failure into the endeavor, one decision at a time? Whether he could turn this movement into a reality rested precariously on his shoulders, an exhilarating yet terrifying prospect. Little did he know. This was just the first test of commitment, pushing him toward an impending confrontation that would reveal not only his capabilities, but also the hidden truths lurking in the shadows of his ambition. How far would he have to go to discover what truly lay beneath the surface of his vision? As that question whispered insistently in the back of his mind, he tightened his grip on resolve, ready to face whatever the journey would demand. The following days felt like an endless cycle of preparation and uncertainty. Jack buried himself in research, racing against time as he jotted down notes and crafted an agenda for the numerous meetings he intended to hold. The enthusiasm of his initial presentation still hummed marginally in his veins, but beneath it lay an undercurrent of growing dread. Each conversation he initiated brought forth new challenges. Parents expressed their concerns about school systems that seemed more hindrance than help, about resources that painfully diminished, and about children slipping through cracks Jack had never considered. He listened, absorbing the pain and resilience in their stories, transforming each piece of feedback into a tangible thread, binding his purpose tighter and tighter. Yet, as he navigated these discussions, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was always one step behind. David's skeptical gaze haunted him. It served as a nagging reminder of the doubt lurking just beneath the surface of his newfound resolve. What if his efforts fell short? The very thought gnawed at him during quiet moments, making him question whether he had enough wisdom or courage to drive meaningful change. One Monday morning, after a particularly taxing meeting, Jack found himself alone in his small home office. The walls echoed his isolation and vulnerability, and with each sigh, he felt the walls closing in. Flipping through pages of scribbled notes, he suddenly paused at a sketch Sam had drawn during their last meeting, an image of an empowering figure surrounded by children, laughter spilling onto the page. It was raw and honest, a reflection of hope that completely juxtaposed Jack's internal chaos. The drawing flipped a switch inside him. He realized that this venture wasn't merely about him, nor was it a lofty project dictated by societal expectation. It was about the kids, like Sam, who had unwavering faith in an uncertain future. He needed to harness that energy, instead of allowing his doubts to overshadow it. It served as a reminder that every setback could lead to growth, and within his own uncertainty lay vast potential for learning. With renewed intention, Jack stepped out of his self-imposed isolation. Each new connection he fostered became a step deeper into the community, but it also forced him to confront more uncomfortable truths about himself. He felt a budding awareness of the biases he held, the gaps in his knowledge, and how that ignorance might lead to missteps in his approach. The reality struck hard. Being a leader demanded humility and courage to face one's own flaws. As he worked, Jack began to embrace his position as a learner in this journey. He focused on understanding storytelling. He structured each meeting around powerful narratives, spotlighting individual experiences and fostering genuine discourse. He saw how a shared story could unite voices and channel collective power. The once constant strain of his fear began to subside as clarity emerged. In fully engaging with each narrative, he was not just advocating for others, he was investing in his transformative experience too. However, it wasn't enough to merely listen. Jack knew that real change would require action, something tangible beyond discussions. His plans morphed with each encounter. He envisioned workshops that would equip kids like Sam with the tools needed to express their own stories, amplifying their voices and drawing even more people into the dialogue. Still, lurking in the recesses of his mind was David's skepticism. This reality check propelled Jack to challenge himself further. He would host a gathering of parents, teachers, and community members to showcase their children's journey. an event to publicly validate the voices that had been overlooked for so long. He poured himself into preparations, each detail meticulously planned, amplifying the stakes with every decision. But in moments alone, fear clawed its way back. What if no one showed? What if he failed them all? As the date approached, the pressure mounted, and Jack found himself on the precipice of a revelation. Would this be a moment that anchored him, solidifying his place among those he sought to empower? Or would it unravel him, exposing vulnerabilities he felt unprepared to face in front of those who needed him most? In that charged silence, he wrestled with the realization. A reckoning was nearing, one that would confront the authentic essence of his ambition. Would he rise to the occasion, or fall victim to the shadows he had worked so hard to confront? Jack stood before his window, the morning light filtering through the glass, as if trying to burn away the fog of self-doubt enveloping him. The clock ticked down to moments he had once envisioned as triumphant. Now, each second echoed like a reminder of what was at stake. The impending gathering loomed larger than life, suddenly more than just a presentation. It was his trial by fire, a test of everything he aspired to achieve. He was haunted by the faces of those he hoped to inspire, the parents and children, especially Sam, who trusted that he might champion their stories. But uncertainty gnawed at the edges of his determination. What if he couldn't articulate their struggles effectively? What if the narrative threads he had woven together fell flat under scrutiny? Questions ricocheted in his mind, a dissonant symphony that made his heart race. In preparation, he had crafted every word and anticipated every response, but still found himself wavering. The deeper he dove into this endeavor, the more he uncovered personal inadequacies. He had positioned himself as a leader, yet the significance of that identity now came with a heavy burden, the fear of letting everyone down, including himself. As he thumbed through his notes, he revisited the sketch Sam had drawn. The figure radiated strength and joy, yet it starkly contrasted with the uncertainty and pressure he felt. In that moment, inspiration struck. To rise as the empowering figure Sam had envisioned, he needed to strip away the practiced facade and connect on a genuine level. Instead of fabricating a grand narrative, perhaps he could share his own vulnerabilities, revealing the struggles of his journey and the lessons learned along the way. With a deep exhale, Jack resolved to embrace authenticity. He began to draft his speech anew, embedding his own story within the framework of others' experiences. He thought of the very real struggles that had dogged him, not just in the professional sphere, but in learning to navigate his own insecurities. He would openly discuss his doubts and the fear that had shadowed his preparations. In doing so, he might ignite a tightly wound thread of empathy amongst those in attendance. Real change was not about being infallible, but acknowledging the cracks through which growth could seep in. Yet, as he scripted his narrative, David's skepticism crept into his periphery once more. What would David think of his approach? Would he see it as a weakness, or recognize it as progressive? The snarl of doubt brewed anew, sluggishly pulsing through his thoughts. Perhaps that uncertainty marked the essence of true growth, the constant negotiation between fear and courage. Inspired by this realization, Jack decided to not only speak, but to invite participation. He envisioned a segment of the gathering dedicated to open dialogue, allowing others to share their stories, their struggles. He would create space for those parents, those voices, demanding to be heard. The next day found Jack in small, intimate circles with various parents, exchanging ideas that could blossom into exercises where their children could culminate their experiences in stories and art. The potential momentum astounded him, yet with each exchanged word, he felt the oppressive weight of his self-doubt lessen, as if they were all chiseling away at the facade he had erected around his identity. The gathering would not only present their truths, but also be a turning point for him. As he reflected on his plan, another thought tugged at the edges of his mind. What if the reception was different than he anticipated? What if the parents didn't connect with his vulnerability? Jack pushed the thought aside, focusing instead on the conviction rising within him. He was not merely facilitating a presentation. He was embarking on a path of shared humanity, one laden with potential connections and revelations. As the date drew near, anticipation fluttered mixed with anxiety, and the underlying question bubbled up once again. Would he truly embrace his authenticity, or would he retreat into the shadows of his doubts and fears? Only time would tell, but the stage was set for a transformation that awaited his courage to materialize, and the risk he was willing to take seemed coiled at the junction of that uncertainty. In the late hours leading to the gathering, he found himself staring at the mirror, silently questioning the depths of his resolve. The moment of truth was approaching. It felt imminent, and he was faced with the decision that would cement his legacy or render his best efforts futile. Would he truly step into the authenticity he envisioned, or would he revert back to the insecure space he had fought to leave behind? The night bore down like a weight, pressing Jack into the confines of his own mind. He eventually drifted to sleep, yet dreams eluded him, leaving only a restless cycle of thoughts swirling in the dark. When dawn finally broke, it wasn't with the clarity he had hoped for. Instead, it came with the dull throb of anxiety, a reminder that his vulnerability was not the same as a weapon. Rather, it felt like the vulnerability of pulling a thread from a tightly woven fabric, one which could unravel at a moment's notice. He dressed mechanically, scarcely aware of the hands that buttoned his shirt or the feet that carried him toward his destination. The drive felt interminable, the world outside the car window morphing into a blur of color and light that failed to register. Each car that passed was a reminder of his solitude in an endeavor that felt insurmountable. Arriving at the venue, he stepped out, the air heavy with the collective energy of anticipation. For a moment, he stood by the entrance, surrounded by bustling people, parents mingling nervously, children laughing, yet his own heartbeats thudded against his ribcage like a drum echoing in a cavern. That's when the gravity of his task hit him anew. As he entered the auditorium, he was greeted by a nascent wave of excitement, colliding with a tide of self-doubt. Faces turned toward him, expectant, and in that instant, he was struck by the realization that these people had entrusted their stories to him. Jack swallowed hard, reminding himself of that spark of inspiration, the authenticity he yearned to convey, and the dialogue he wished to foster. The stage stood like a mountain before him. He had painted it in his mind as a grand platform, a space for champions, while in reality, it presented the stark width between his aspirations and real connections. Setting his notes on the stand, he sensed the weight of responsibility bearing down on him. He had stepped from the shadows where fear thrived, but here, amidst expectations, he grappled with whether to maintain that boldness or slip back into a carefully curated persona. As the gathering began, the air buzzed with nervous energy. Jack looked at the audience, feeling as if he were seeing them for the first time, a colorful tapestry of each struggle told in the lines of their faces. With shaky breath, he recalled Sam's sketch. He closed his eyes for a brief moment, grounding himself in the thought of that hopeful, radiant figure and the voices around him that craved understanding. He took the microphone, the cool metal grounding him. "Good evening," he began, voice trembling slightly. "I stand before you today not just as someone who wishes to uplift your stories, but as someone who's embarking on his own journey of growth and reflection. Before we dive into all the wonderful narratives you have to share, I want to be open about my own struggles." Cries of confusion swept through, but he pressed on. As he spoke candidly about his doubts, the anxiety, the thoughts he had fought under layers upon layers of pretense, he felt the room shift. Murmurs of recognition sparked from the parents, eyes widening as if they too had been channeling their hidden insecurities. That moment of connection ignited a flame within him, a sensation he had long sought. He saw them nod. He recognized their shared hesitations as he spoke of moments when his own fears overshadowed his aspirations. Jack stepped away from the script. He was no longer a leader isolated on a path, but a fellow traveler in a shared narrative of struggles and resilience. Real vulnerability became a bridge, inviting others to cross into a dialogue that was no longer about him. The openness sparked a series of voices: a mother's tearful acknowledgement, a father's raw recount of a past mistake, children sharing their own interpretations of fears tangible and intangible. Yet, amid this exchange, David's disapproval flickered back in his mind like a haunting shadow. Jack knew that he had deviated from the formula-driven approach that was safe, but felt restrictive. Would David think him reckless? Had this leap of faith scattered the structure he had set out to present? But his heart beat steadily now, fueled by the symbiotic energy in the room, support wrapped around him like an embrace. Feeling the empowerment surge through him, Jack smiled warmly as the stories unfolded. He noticed a little boy sitting near the front, intently listening, his eyes shining with a mix of curiosity and resolve. Would he find the strength to share, to free the burdens he carried? The gathering had transformed into an unexpected oasis of connection, yet doubt still lingered. It whispered that this could all be snatched away, an illusion of acceptance teetering on the brink of vulnerability. Jack sought to push forward, empowered yet aware that the moment of revelation had only begun to unfurl. As the voices grew louder, a question inflected with urgency arose in his mind. What if this was a pivotal change for him and the boy? What if the real journey lay not just in the sharing, but in understanding what they might discover about their hidden strengths together? The conclusion of Jack's journey coalesced on that night, under the dim lights of the auditorium, filled with the hopes and voices of a community, his community. With the stories echoing around him, Jack experienced a pivotal metamorphosis. He gradually transformed not only into a supporter of others, but into a champion of empathy and authentic connection. What began as his quest to uplift Sam had morphed into an invaluable exploration of shared humanity. Jack realized that every ounce of fear he held tight transformed into a lifeline for others, in a collective journey toward recognition and belief in possibilities. Gazes met across the room, forming a web of commitment that wrapped around each child and parent, shattering barriers of isolation. Each narrative shared, the struggles, the dreams, and the triumphs, fueled a deeper understanding within Jack. This dialogue was not merely about facilitating change, it was about igniting a community's potential, each voice a vital thread in the fabric of a new narrative. He dared to reflect on his past aspirations. Each mound of financial achievement now felt overshadowed by the explosive potential of collaboration and mentorship. As the gathering drew to a close, Jack stood at the forefront, no longer just a guide, but an integral part of a movement that had instigated a newfound trajectory. With each story retold, he discovered strength in vulnerability. No longer was he metaphorically shackled to his old definitions of success. He was painting a new legacy, one heralding the triumphs of collective potential over sheer individual ambition. In a swirl of applause and nods of appreciation, Jack felt more than the validation of his message. He felt the gravity of interconnected dreams. How thrilling that perhaps he had ushered a shift wider than he initially envisioned. Children like Sam, once crushed under the weight of societal indifference, now stood as stalwarts of hope in a narrative rewritten through understanding and support. "Thank you for sharing," Jack declared, his voice unwavering as he surveyed the audience. "Your courage lights the path forward. Let's transform our intentions into action, not just for today's gathering, but for the very future that thrives on these voices." At that moment, something fundamental within Jack had been crystallized. He wasn't just an observer or a benefactor. He was a catalyst for change. As the evening transitioned into conversations filled with ideas of collaboration and unity, Jack radiated with solid confidence. Gone was the man driven solely by ambition. In his place stood a partner ready to help cultivate pathways for young minds like Sam's. Weeks later, Jack received an unexpected email. It was a formal acknowledgement from a local education foundation intent on partnering with him on a mentorship program. His work had not gone unnoticed, garnering recognition that resonated deeply. This was a tangible achievement reflective of Jack's transformation, not merely branding his name, but validating the authenticity of his commitment to fostering change. In his newfound role, Jack was invited to speak at youth workshops designed to empower students in various pursuits. A once imposing figure in the real estate arena, he had established competence in an entirely different capacity, one rooted in nurturing potential rather than self-serving ambition. Standing at the podium in a community hall adorned with drawings from children he now supported, Jack felt a torrent of pride welling within him. He had witnessed Sam present his very own project, standing tall and confident, while other young dreamers joined hands to share their innovative ideas. Each word was a reminder of the potential Jack had once been blind to, and now fully embraced. Through the trials of doubt and hesitation, Jack Thompson had emerged transformed, a visionary ignited by the power of empathy and genuine connection. He understood, unequivocally, that true success lay not in wealth, but in weaving together the aspirations of those around him. Each child, each family they uplifted added depth to his legacy, grounding him in solid values that transcended past ambitions. He looked back on the man he once was, a self-made millionaire focused solely on accolades, and felt a profound satisfaction wash over him. Jack had conquered the barriers of complacency, stepping boldly into a role that empowered others, earning applause not for pursuit, but for purpose. In this journey of vulnerability and connection, Jack had discovered fulfillment beyond measure. A new chapter awaited, intertwining his life story with those of the young dreamers he vowed to support. As he took a moment to reflect, a realization resounded within him. The challenge of facing truths had birthed a legacy that would shine far brighter than any skyscraper could ever reach. Now more than ever, Jack understood the stakes. Growth demanded enlightenment, and the urgency to catalyze change echoed through the stories unfolding around him. You need to subscribe now to ensure you do not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. This is the moment to show your support. Hit that like button now to feed the algorithm. Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. After all, true fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting this channel.